This lesson is on equations of circles. Most of you know from previous classes what a circle is. You know that the center is the point that is the same distance from every point on the circle. You know that the radius is the distance from the center of the circle to any point on the circle. And you know that the diameter is the longest chord that extends from one side of the circle to the other and passes through the center. But what you don't know probably is that there is an equation of the circle. It's a little bit similar, it's a lot similar to the distance formula, where the center is your h and your k, and your radius is r. Notice this is r squared. A lot of students have trouble going from the r squared to the r. One thing that you need to recognize too is that h always goes with x. Y always goes with k, even when the equation is written out of order. So you just want to make sure to remember that. So to write the equation or to get the center and the radius when you have the equation of a circle. So remember that the equation is this. So the h is easy. We can see x minus h matches the x minus 6, and so the h is 6. And then the problem with this, the next part, y plus 3, is that it should be minus. The minus comes standard with the equation. So I could rewrite this y minus a negative 3. That's the same thing as y plus 3. And that means my k is negative 3. Now, that's easy to do. You can always remember that there's a minus, but students tend to want to put that minus in front and that plus in front. Well, if you notice, this is a minus 6 and this is a plus 6. And this is a plus 3 and this is a minus 3. So the other thing that you can do is you can just know that whenever you pull the center coordinates out of the equation, they are going to be the opposite of what they are in the equation. And the same goes for putting them back into the equation and using them to write it, that they go in as the opposite of what they were before. So then r squared is 36. If you take the square root of both sides, then r is 6. With this next one, notice that this term there's no actual h, and so that's understood to be 0. And then if we go with what we were talking about being opposite, if that is negative 5, then my k would be positive 5. And if r squared is 28, then r is the square root of 28. So the square root of 28, we always want to simplify. 2 ways to do that. It's approximately 5.3 if you type it in on your calculator. Or to simplify the square root of 28, you've probably learned how to do the factor trees, then pull out your pairs. And so that reduces to 2 square root of 7. Which is the best way to write it. So this last one, the center would be at negative 2, negative 1, and then if r squared is 1, then r is, in this case, also 1. Now, on this next one, to write the equation for each, if you've been given the center and the radius, again, remember that it's x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared. So we simply plug it in. Again, remember, it goes in opposite. So it would be x, and then that's negative 1, so it would be plus 1 squared. And then y minus 2, because it was a positive 2 squared, is equal to r squared. Well, r is 3, so r squared would be 9. The next one, we have h is negative 3, and k is 0. So we would have x plus 3 squared plus y minus 0, or just y squared, is equal to, well, if r is the square root of 7, then r squared is the square root of 7 squared, which is 7. The square root of 7 times the square root of 7 is 7. Then we've got our h and our k is actually at our origin this time, so it's going to be x squared plus y squared, or x minus 0 squared, and y minus 0 squared. And you have to be careful with this one because r squared would be 5 root 3 squared, not 5 root 3 squared with no parentheses. You have to have the parentheses In order to get that right, if you type that in on your calculator, you want to be sure that you use the parentheses, because the 5 is squared and the root 3 is squared, which means that it's 75. If you don't type it in right, you'll get 15, because the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is 3. But if you don't square the 5, then you'll do 3 times 5. So we can write the equation of a circle if we are given the center and the radius. So now let's look at these with a graph. So sketch the graph of the circle whose equation is x minus 1 squared plus y plus 2 squared is equal to 16. Well, to graph it, we need the center. So the center we can get straight from the equation. So it's x minus 1, so h would be 1, and y plus 2, so k would be negative 2. And then the radius squared is 16, so the radius would be 4. So then you would come over here and you would graph it, 1, negative 2, you would put your center. You can't do your radius at a diagonal because you can't count across these lines at a diagonal, but we can do north, south, east, and west. We can go out 4, up 4, back 4, and down 4. And then as you're doing this, try to draw as close as you can, but it needs to have a radius of 4 all the way around. And it needs to look somewhat like a circle. Don't draw it as a diamond and just connect the dots with straight lines. So then we can take that same idea and write the standard equation of a line, or excuse me, of a circle. And the center of this circle is at 3, negative 4. The radius is 2, and those are the two things you need to write the equation. So I have x minus 3 squared, because your h was positive, so it goes into the equation as negative, plus y plus 4 squared, same idea, the k was negative, it goes into the equation as positive, equals r squared. Well, r is 2, so r squared is 4. Now with a problem like B, you want to be careful, because if you notice, each of these boxes is 2. So these squares, the scale on this is 2 by 2, so be careful with that. So my center is at 0, negative 4. My radius is 6, 2, 4, 6. So you write the equation of the line. Actually, you don't need the parentheses with the first one because it's x minus 0, which is just x squared, plus y minus a negative 4, or y plus 4, is equal to 6 squared, which is 36. So these next two problems really get into the meat of what we're doing. So write the equation of a circle whose center, which we need, is negative 4, 1, and passes through the point negative 6, 5. So let me just give you a visual of what we're doing. You could do this if you wanted to. You don't have to. And then, so here is what we've got. Ish, right? So the circle is not drawn to scale, but write the equation of a circle whose center is at negative 4, 1, passes through the point negative 6, 5, and so that would be our radius. So we've got our radius right here. So we have our center, we need our radius. So if you want, you can go in and do the formula for distance formula, because the radius has a length. So I would do negative 4 minus a negative 6 plus 1 minus 5. That's your x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Simplify, you get 2 squared plus negative 4 squared. So r squared, or actually r, is equal to the square root of 20. But I need r squared to write the equation. So you do r squared is 20, square both sides. There are other ways to do this. Remember, we've talked about different ways to simplify and use the distance formula. So if you have another way to do it, then that's great. And then we just write the equation. So my center, that's my h and my k. Here's my r squared. So I have x plus 4 squared plus y minus 1 squared is equal to r squared, which is 20. Last one, write the equation of a circle that has a diameter. So let's just get a visual on what this looks like. The negative 9, 4 right here, and 9, 0 right here. And so this is the diameter. So this would be the circle we would be looking at. Well, if you're sitting there looking at this problem and you don't have a clue what to do, then draw a picture so it'll help kind of jog your memory. So we need a center and we need a radius. Well, the center is going to be half of the diameter because it's halfway. The radius is 2 times the diameter. So the center would be the midpoint. So if we go back to the midpoint formula, -9 plus 9 over 2 and 4 plus 0 over 2, we find out that our midpoint is at 0, 2. And you would also get that if you graphed it. You can always put this on graph paper and see it. That way you could visualize it. So now we know our h and our k. We need our radius. So you can use the midpoint, or you can find the diameter and take half of that, whichever one you want to do. But since I need the radius, I'm going to go ahead and do it. Now, I do happen, let me show you this other way, like I was talking about before. You might have another way to do it. This could be it. We can use the Pythagorean theorem right here. I know that this side is 2 and this side is 9. So I can do, then this would be r squared. So I can use Pythagorean theorem, 2 squared plus 9 squared is equal to r squared. And if that's the case, then 2 squared plus 9 squared is 85 is r squared. There's no reason to go ahead and find that square root because we need r squared to write the equation. So in order to then, so now you finish out your equation. So you have x minus 0, or x squared, plus y minus k, which was 2, is equal to r squared, which is 85. So it's important to know how to use the formula. 1, that the formula exists, and 2, how to use it. So be sure that you are careful with how you write the equation. Your h and your k is your center, your r is your radius, but r squared is what's in the equation. So be sure that you take the square root of it when you want to take it out and find